Each of us carries a quiet certainty that everything is under control: marriage, career, finances, children, especially when you're used to calling the shots. But what happens when the one you always saw as weak suddenly becomes the predator? What if the person you betrayed without fear of consequences rips the ground out from under you, dismantling your world with surgical precision? Not with shouting, not with revenge in the classic sense, but with a cold, calculated strategy. She came back expecting remorse, forgiveness, a tearful reunion. But her husband had other plans. He didn't start a scene. He didn't beg her to stay. He simply vanished, leaving behind frozen accounts, a fired lover, and a wife stripped of status, career, and respect. This wasn't just revenge. This was demolition. And the most terrifying part? He never laid a finger on her. He used her own voice, her own actions, her own words. Only now they were evidence. When a woman used to power finds herself exiled from her own life, true hell begins. And in that hell, there's no fire, no devil, only memories, humiliation, and an utterly unshakable silence from the other side. Hello, my friend. I'm so glad you stopped by my channel. If it's your first time here, don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as every like truly inspires me. Please tell me which city and country you watched this video from. Now, let's get started. Margot Walters stepped off the plane with the composed elegance of someone who had nothing to apologize for. Her posture was poised, her demeanor unapologetically self-assured. There wasn't the faintest trace of regret on her face for the 6-week romance she'd pursued in Colombia. And why should there be? She was successful, attractive, and felt suffocated in her marriage to Ryan. Dr. Thomas had sparked something inside her that she thought had long since withered away. Their connection had been thrilling, bold even, until it all unraveled with a single phone call. Ryan's voice, furious and raw with betrayal, had rattled her. Oddly, a part of her had admired the unexpected fire in him. But as time passed, Thomas lost his shine. Once he realized the extent of her marital dysfunction, his warmth curdled into cruelty. His once charming words turned cutting, his tone laced with condescension. What had begun as a taste of freedom quickly soured into something degrading. Still, Margot clung to her pride. She endured the disdain, masked her hurt behind practiced indifference, all the way until the moment Thomas blatantly swapped seats to avoid her on the flight home. At the same time, her co-worker Paula, caught up in a similar entanglement, shared a disturbing revelation. Ryan had contacted her, threatening to reveal the affair to her husband, Jack, a man with a reputation for volatility. Paula had laughed nervously at the warning, but her worst fears came true the moment they landed. A process server greeted her with divorce papers. Margot watched the drama unfold, waiting for her own moment of public judgment. But no one came for her. That, she concluded, was all the confirmation she needed. Ryan didn't have the backbone to leave her. She imagined him sulking alone, heartbroken but still clinging to the fantasy that she would come back. After 6 weeks abroad, Margot was ready to reclaim her dominance. She pictured Ryan wounded, longing, relieved to see her walk through the door. But her confidence shattered the second she entered the Ambassador Hotel. She expected him to be there, waiting. The lobby, however, was silent and vacant. Fighting off an uneasy feeling, she went straight to the front desk. With a cool smile, she handed over her credit cards. One by one, they were declined. A cold ripple spread through her chest. She urged the clerk to try again, her voice steady despite the rising panic. But the result didn't change. As heads turned toward her, she stepped aside, brushing off the anxiety that prickled beneath her skin. There had to be some explanation. But when she tried to call Ryan, her screen displayed a message she hadn't expected. Number disconnected. That's when a sharply dressed man approached, extending an envelope. "Mr. Walters asked me to deliver this," he said. No legal notice, no final goodbye, just a sealed envelope. Inside, a typed letter and a smaller one folded neatly. Her breath caught as she started to read. Ryan wasn't waiting. He hadn't forgiven her. He wasn't broken. He had transformed. Gone was the passive husband she used to manipulate. What she saw in those words was someone calculating, cold, and resolute. One sentence struck harder than the rest. You convinced yourself I had something with Deidre while I was stationed in Iraq. I didn't. He described a fleeting, emotional moment shared with a grief-stricken colleague, but made it clear it had never gone further. He'd offered comfort during a crisis. That was it. Then he compared that to her deliberate betrayal. The plans, the lies, the repeated deceit. Margot remembered the excuses she had fed herself, the justifications she leaned on whenever a pang of guilt emerged. Her lips pressed into a hard line as she continued reading. I also know about Korea. Every detail was there. The strange detours to the Red Roof Inn hadn't escaped him. She had never admitted to that affair, but he had known all along. Heat rose in her cheeks. That had been years ago, buried, forgotten. Why bring it up now? That had been a brief indulgence, a reckless fling with a night shift anesthesiologist. It had ended the moment Ryan returned. As far as she was concerned, it no longer mattered. But Ryan wasn't finished. From your behavior, I've learned this marriage operates with one person making all the decisions. Since mutual respect seems optional, I've decided to do the same. Her heartbeat kicked up. Optional? Fair? What was he getting at? With each line, the reality sank in deeper. He drained their bank accounts, sold their house, canceled his phone, and was about to disappear on a solo road trip with no clear destination. She flipped through the pages faster now, her panic growing. And then came the blow that stole the breath from her lungs. I gave the hospital everything. The images, the recordings. Your precious Dr. Thomas will be out of a job by Monday. And so will you. HR already has the file. The documents are just waiting for signatures. Everything she had built, her career, her professional reputation, was collapsing around her. Ryan had scorched the earth, and he wasn't done. I showed the kids too. They know. They saw what you did. They asked if I planned to cut you off completely. I told them I'd reach out to you exactly as often as you did these last 6 weeks. Not once. She could hear the biting sarcasm in the words. This wasn't the man she had dismissed as weak and docile. This was someone entirely different. Then came the final gut punch. I'm not divorcing you. If she wanted to be free, she'd have to walk away herself. He wouldn't fight her. He didn't need to. He'd already stripped her of everything, assets, security, even the respect of their children. Enjoy the open relationship you were so eager to have. At the bottom of the envelope was a single item, a gift card, $500, the last piece of financial independence she had left. Margot's fingers trembled as she held it. A violent blend of humiliation, fury, and fear roared within her like a tempest. She crammed the letter back into its envelope, unwilling to dignify it with any more of her attention. Her eyes stung, but she blinked hard, denying herself the release of tears. Her breath came in uneven bursts as she hissed Ryan's name under her breath, no longer a partner, but a traitor. He'd torn her world apart. Straightening her back with forced composure, Margot approached the hotel's reception desk. With practiced calm, she slid the envelope under her purse and gave a brisk snap of her fingers. I need a room, she said coolly. My husband dumped me here without warning, but I've got cash, if that's a problem. The clerk looked startled. We do accept cash, ma'am, but we'll still need valid ID and a deposit, the woman responded gently. Margot's stomach gave a twist. How much cash did she actually have? She rifled through her bag and came up with a lone, wrinkled $100 bill, nowhere near enough. With clenched teeth, she tore open the second envelope Ryan had left behind, pulling out a $500 prepaid card. She forced a serene expression as she offered it. Try this. If Ryan had at least been truthful once in his life, it might get her through a night or two. She tapped her heel against the marble floor while the card was processed. When the transaction was approved, the relief that hit her was sharp and sour. She booked only a single night. "Room 1010, Miss Walters. Enjoy your stay," the clerk said, her tone polite, but her smile strained. Margot thought she caught a flicker of either sympathy or subtle judgment in the woman's eyes. She took the key card, summoned a bellhop, and walked off without another word. A fire smoldered in her chest, burning with betrayal, with humiliation, and with the sudden collapse of the life she had curated so carefully. The bellhop followed wordlessly, awkwardly steering her luggage behind him. As Margot jabbed the elevator button, she glanced at her phone, half hoping Ryan would call so she could unleash every word she was choking on. But his number wasn't just blocked. It had been disconnected. Another calculated erasure. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, the letter's weight still heavy in her bag, like a brand of disgrace she couldn't shake. Once in the room, she paced aimlessly, mind spiraling, unable to still the chaos inside her. Her suitcase sat untouched by the bed. Beyond the tall windows, the city glimmered, but all she saw in the reflection was a broken version of herself, unraveling. She dropped onto the bed, and memory dragged her backward, back to the night she'd first given in to Thomas. Back then, she'd believed Ryan would never truly walk away. Thomas had been charming, always knowing just what to say, telling her she was too radiant for a life so dim, too ambitious to be trapped in a loveless marriage. His words had wrapped around her like silk. She had soaked it all in, convinced Ryan was spineless, the type to wait quietly while she chased freedom. She'd paraded her affair like a badge, laughing with Thomas, certain Ryan would eventually cool off and accept it. He always had. But now she saw the truth. Her smugness had finally broken something in him that couldn't be repaired. A flicker of guilt surfaced, but rage still held the stronger grip. She wasn't going to let this end her. She might be penniless, abandoned, and furious, but she would not collapse. The next morning, after barely any sleep, she woke with steel in her spine. She picked up her phone and dialed the bank, clinging to the hope that it was all some bureaucratic error. But after identifying herself, the voice on the other end was cold and scripted. "Mrs. Walters, all shared accounts have been closed under a valid power of attorney signed by Mr. Ryan Walters. I'm afraid we cannot disclose any further details. You'll need to contact him directly." She hung up with a trembling hand, fists tightening until her nails bit her palms. Desperate, she called her children, both adults, both scattered in different cities. Her son didn't answer. Her daughter's phone went straight to voicemail. She left a curt message. "Call me. It's urgent." That was all. She couldn't explain over voicemail. Not like this. But an awful thought crept into her mind like a chill. Had Ryan turned them against her too? She dressed with care, selecting crisp trousers and a tailored blouse, pinning her hair into a clean updo. She flagged down a taxi and headed to the hospital. If she could speak with HR before Ryan's lies took root, there was still a chance. Her reputation was solid. Her boss respected her. She was a sharp, capable, no-nonsense nurse manager. They needed her. She wasn't about to let Ryan burn her career to the ground. Arriving just before the lunch hour, she walked briskly through the lobby, ignoring the sideways glances. Word had spread. She headed directly to human resources, ready to confront whatever story Ryan had spun. Behind the desk sat a woman with a strict expression and a polished nameplate. Miss Whitaker, HR manager. The name stirred something. She remembered it from Ryan's letter. Miss Whitaker looked up with calm detachment. "Margot Walters, I expected you," she said, her voice clipped, with just enough frost to sting. Margot met her gaze, determined not to flinch. "I'm here to clear up whatever outrageous things my husband's been saying." Miss Whitaker's lips pressed into a thin line. You might not know the contents of what he submitted, but we received explicit material, photographs, documentation, compiled by a licensed investigator. In addition, Mr. I. Walters is pursuing legal action under our morality clause should we continue your employment, or that of Dr. Thomas Mills. Margot's jaw tightened. He's trying to punish me. That doesn't make it valid. You signed the code of conduct, Ms. Walters, Miss Whitaker replied evenly, one eyebrow lifting. We have the paperwork, and your signature. She placed a folder carefully on the desk, flipping it open to reveal a specific clause. It detailed the hospital's right to terminate employees in high-visibility positions, especially those who serve as the face of the institution, if their conduct or entanglements might damage its public standing. A section, highlighted in yellow, stood out. She tapped it gently. This is sufficient grounds, she said. Margot's voice shot up, sharp and incredulous, though her heart pounded. You can't be serious, she said. This wasn't some public meltdown. It was a private matter. Miss Whitaker remained composed, her voice calm and precise. Your husband's email didn't stay private. He sent it broadly. Colleagues, doctors, affiliates, even donors received it. It was explicit, detailed. Everyone's talking about it, both inside these walls and beyond, she continued, her delivery unflinching. We've received official complaints. Some staff members are raising ethical concerns about your actions. A few major donors are reevaluating their support due to the fallout. Margot felt her cheeks burn, a mix of shame and disbelief washing over her. Not even in her darkest imaginings had she thought Ryan would make her humiliation this widespread. So that's it? She asked, bitterness creeping into her voice. You're just cutting me loose? Miss Whitaker's lips pressed into a thin line as she gave a faint shake of her head. This is still under legal consideration. I'm not here to pass judgment on your choices, Ms. Walters, but the board is focused on mitigating both legal and reputational damage. She slid a sealed envelope across the desk. Effective immediately, you're suspended without pay. You'll be notified of further decisions in due course. Margot stood there, stunned and rigid. She wanted to lash out, but the fury and confusion tangled inside her, choking off words. In silence, she grabbed the envelope and spun toward the door. Behind her, Miss Whitaker added coolly, Security will assist you in retrieving your personal effects. A uniformed guard appeared, tall, impassive. Margot walked ahead, chin raised, trying to mask the weight pressing down on her. She felt the eyes, curious, pitying, judgmental, on her back. Whispers buzzed through the air like static. The rumor had clearly made its rounds. As she neared the nurse's station, she spotted Dr. Thomas surrounded by staff. He looked pale, sweat shining on his brow. The nurses who used to beam at him now eyed him with scorn. His expression twisted when he saw her, a flicker of panic crossing his face. What the hell happened? She demanded. He pulled her aside, gripping her arm tightly. Your lunatic husband, he hissed, sent HR everything, photos, videos. He's trying to destroy us. I'm already being investigated. Margot yanked her arm free. My lunatic husband? You didn't seem so concerned while we were screwing around in Colombia. You think I signed up to be Exhibit A in some workplace morality tale? I'm getting canned too. Thomas's face contorted with frustration. Don't turn this on me. You were the one complaining about your boring husband, saying he basically gave you the green light. How the hell was I supposed to know the guy was that unstable? If I'd had any clue, I'd have run the other way. A soft ding echoed from the corridor, the elevator. 2 security guards began walking toward them. Thomas straightened, ripped the stethoscope from his neck, and stepped back as if anticipating arrest. Perfect, he muttered. HR wants a word. Might as well be my execution. Margot didn't spare him a drop of sympathy. She still remembered his smug chuckle the night Ryan had first called, mocking Ryan's restraint and sneering that real men don't beg. And now look at him, on the verge of collapse. Her glare was ice cold. "Enjoy your open relationship," she snapped, using Ryan's words like a blade, then turned and walked away, leaving Thomas behind as the guards flanked him. She was nearly out of the building when a familiar voice stopped her cold. She turned to see Lana, her neighbor, the same one she'd once clumsily tried to involve in her experiment with non-monogamy, standing nearby, arms crossed, eyes full of judgment. "Well, look who it is," Lana said, her voice laced with chill. Her eyes flicked over Margot's designer outfit. "So, I assume you've read Ryan's email." Margot's gut twisted. "What are you even doing here?" "Victor had a checkup," Lana said flatly, brushing past the question. "I also stopped by HR to finalize some stuff for a new part-time role, and let's just say your name's been unavoidable today." Margot's pride flared, but the shame clung stubbornly to her. "Don't give me the moral high ground speech," she snapped. "Word is you and your husband are into swinging, so you're not exactly a model of virtue." Lana let out a dry laugh. "Sure, we're into swinging, but we do it with honesty. We're transparent. No secrets. You tried to drag me into something behind Ryan's back. That's not open. It's deceit." Margot's hands balled into fists. "You're the one who filled my head with that open marriage crap. You acted like it was some kind of magical fix, and now look where I am." Lana's expression briefly softened, then steeled again. "You made your choices, Margot. You don't get to pin this on me. And for what it's worth, Ryan's a hell of a lot better man than you ever gave him credit for. If only you'd chosen transparency and told him the truth, who can say what understanding you might have reached? But instead you resorted to secrecy, games, and humiliation. I was kept completely out of the loop, and so was he." Margot's fists tightened at her sides. "You're defending him? After he destroyed everything I worked for?" she shot back. "He sold our house, emptied the accounts, made sure everyone turned their backs on me. He's the villain here." Lana's expression hardened, eyes cooling. "You created this version of him, Margot. Every choice triggers a consequence," Lana said, her voice even but edged like glass. "I told him that over dinner. And no, he wasn't trying to sleep with me. The idea made him sick, especially after you dragged us both through your twisted narrative." Heat surged into Margot's cheeks, her face aflame with a mix of rage and humiliation. She wanted to lash back, had a cutting reply ready, but the words refused to form. Instead, she hissed, "Tell him I hope he enjoys that trashy RV. The two of you can bask in your moral high ground." She turned on her heel and stormed out, ignoring the curious looks trailing behind her. By the time she exited the hospital, clouds had swallowed the sky, and rain began to fall, matching the storm churning inside her. Her career was teetering, almost certainly over. Her credit cards had been locked. The house she once clung to was now under new ownership. She saw in her mind the old backyard deck where she used to dream of escape. That dream no longer belonged to her. Pulling out her phone, she tried reaching out to a couple of former co-workers. One answered, voice cautious, mentioning that Ryan had sent them evidence. The other didn't even bother picking up. The silence only deepened the fury rising in her chest. So what if she'd cheated? Worse things had broken and healed in marriages. Who were they to pass judgment? With no other options, she slinked back to the Ambassador Hotel, living off the humiliating gift card Ryan had left behind. As the taxi rattled through the city, she simmered in her own bitterness. She had to track him down. She reached out to everyone, old neighbors, the realtor who finalized the sale. No one would talk. It was as if he'd erased himself completely. That night, alone in the hotel room, she sat in silence, the city lights outside blinking like cold reminders of what she'd lost. She checked her phone. No missed calls, no texts, no hand reaching out. But her email overflowed. Against her better judgment, she opened it. Dozens of forwarded messages sent from Ryan, photos, her, with Thomas. Her stomach twisted as she skimmed the subject lines. My wife's new morals. Doctors without ethics. Open relationships, her version only. He had blasted them out. Friends, family, even people from their old church. Her hands shook with rage. She paced the room, breathing heavily, mind racing through possible revenge. Lawsuits, counterattacks, anything to claw her life back. But could it really be defamation, if the photos were real? He held all the leverage now. She sank onto the bed, clutching the blanket like it might keep her from breaking apart. How could he do this? How could he air everything so publicly, with no care for the wreckage? If he had handled it quietly, maybe they could have salvaged something from the ruins, but instead, he chose to unravel her existence thread by thread, and somewhere, in a shadowy corner of her mind, a voice whispered, "You struck the match." She shoved the thought away before it could root. The next morning brought a fragile flicker of something like hope, a voicemail from her daughter. The girl's voice was strained, cautious. "Mom? I got your message. I don't even know how to respond. Dad told me everything. We saw the photos. He didn't leave out a thing. I'm really hurt, Mom, and I'm worried about him too. He's angry, really angry. Said he's going off the grid for a while. I love you, but I can't support what you did. I don't want to be pulled into this war between you two. Maybe we can talk eventually, but right now, I just need space. I'm sorry." Tears welled in Margot's eyes. Her own daughter had stepped away from her. She tried calling back, voicemail, tried her son, nothing. Desperation laced her voice as she left one message after another. "Please, let me explain. It's not what it looks like." But deep down, she already knew. Ryan had seized control of the story. For hours, she scoured the internet for lawyers, anyone who might help her push back. Every firm declined. One didn't sugarcoat it. If the photos are real, there's no case for slander. And without money, you can't challenge the sale. She ended the call with a curse under her breath. It was over. No career, no cash, no support. That afternoon, a strange message landed in her inbox. Her heart leapt. "Ryan?" She clicked it open, scanning the words quickly. "Margot, you're probably ignoring this, but I'm sending it anyway. This email is temporary. You won't trace it. I'll delete it soon. Now you know how it feels, to have your life dismantled, your version of the story erased, and no way to speak for yourself. You built this system. You just never imagined it would turn on you. I left a few of your things in a storage unit, addresses below, just random bits, scribbled notes, trinkets, fragments of old days. Nothing worth anything. The unit's open on Saturday, 8 a.m. to noon. After that, it's done. Don't wait on me. I won't be there. I'm already gone. Let's just say I've put some serious distance behind me. There's something about an open road that makes you breathe easier. Maybe this is my final gesture of decency. I'm doing it because, once, I loved you. Maybe you'll want a fragment of what we were. Or maybe you won't. R." Margot felt a tightness bloom in her chest. He was deleting her, step by step, from the life they had built. Efficient, detached, and somehow still courteous. A farewell masked as convenience. A final offer to sift through what remained. Fueled by anger, she hammered out a reply, only for it to bounce back instantly. Email no longer valid. Naturally. At 7:45 that Saturday morning, Margot stood alone in a narrow alley, surrounded by rows of rusted storage units under a thick gray sky. She'd spent another night holed up in a cheap motel, rationing snacks from a dwindling gift card. Weariness settled deep into her limbs. The unit Ryan mentioned was padlocked. She checked her phone. 7:58 a.m. Typical Ryan. Was this real or just another mind game? As if summoned, a storage employee shuffled over, keys jingling at his hip. "You Margot Walters?" he asked flatly. She nodded. He undid the lock and rolled up the corrugated door with a screech. "Said to open it at 8. You've got it till noon. After that, I close it up," he said, then walked away. Margot stepped in. Her eyes took a moment to adjust to the gloom. 5 boxes sat there, each one scrawled with Ryan's unmistakable handwriting. Junk, misc, keepsakes, letters, and, of course, Margot's vices. She knelt beside them, peeling open the lids and rifling through the contents. Waves of emotion surged as she touched each item. It felt like he was still orchestrating everything, still pulling the strings, even from a distance. Her fingers brushed a photo, one of them laughing, bundled in ski gear 2 decades ago. Ryan's hand clasped hers in the shot, his face full of warmth. A sudden pang of longing hit her, immediately followed by the sour burn of memory. She flung the photo aside, her jaw clenched. Minutes passed like hours. She didn't know what she was even hoping to find. Proof that he'd cared, maybe. But all she uncovered were scattered pieces of a story already over. This wasn't kindness. It was a statement. A curated reminder of everything she'd lost, or ruined. By 9:30, she'd sorted the few items that meant something. None had financial value, but they were heavy with personal weight. She hesitated over the letters, tempted to leave them behind, but something stubborn in her refused. He didn't get to own the whole story. Dragging the boxes outside, she scanned the street for a cab. This was her past now, battered and boxed up, but still hers to bear. Then came a voice. "Margot?" A woman stepped out of a nearby car. She was older, her face soft with concern. "I'm Evelyn Walker. My husband and I bought your house, from Ryan." Margot froze. That name. She remembered it from Ryan's message, Roy and Evelyn Walker. Evelyn looked older than expected, worn out, maybe by kids or life in general. Margot gave a slow nod. "That's me." "I didn't mean to catch you off guard," Evelyn said, gentle. "Ryan told us about this unit, mentioned you might stop by. He said we could coordinate, but I mostly just wanted to say we didn't know. We didn't want to step on anything." Margot's jaw tightened. "You mean my house?" Evelyn's face fell with sympathy. "Yes, I'm truly sorry. We didn't realize what we were stepping into, but all the documents were legitimate. Everything was done properly." "Sure," Margot said with a bitter edge. "Ryan's good at making things look neat." Evelyn hesitated. "I know this might not mean much, but he told us you were moving on, that this was something you wanted." Margot let out a short, cold laugh. "Of course he did. He's rewriting the whole story now." A silence settled. "I hope you're enjoying the new deck," Margot added. "And the floors. I paid for all of it." Evelyn shifted awkwardly. "If it helps, you're welcome to visit. To say goodbye, if that would bring you any peace. If there are memories—" "Don't!" Margot snapped, her voice cracking. Her eyes brimmed with tears. "Paint the walls, tear the place apart, fill it with whatever you want. I'm done." Evelyn nodded silently, her face etched with regret. "I'm truly sorry," she said again, then turned back to her car. Margot stood there, holding her boxes tightly, her breath unsteady. Later, back in the motel room, the boxes formed a quiet, uneven stack in the corner. She dropped into a chair, pulled the letters onto her lap, and began to read. Among the pile of old letters she had hidden away for years, one caught her attention. An unpolished, unsigned draft she had penned long ago in the wake of a brutal argument. The fight had erupted over the question of loyalty, sparked by her growing suspicions that he had been unfaithful during a trip to the Middle East. In that draft, she had unleashed the full force of her fury, her doubts, and the gnawing sting of betrayal. She had never mustered the courage to give it to him. Yet now, cruelly, every fear she had once scribbled down had come back around to crash straight into her reality. "Ryan, if you ever betray me, I swear you'll regret it. I'm not the kind of woman who forgives deception. I'll tear down every dream we built together." Even now, As the letter slipped from her fingers, its rawness made her flinch. Not once had she envisioned herself as the one who would break the trust, and never in her wildest imagination had she thought that Ryan, kind, easygoing Ryan, would be the one to bring her world crashing down. Then came the day she'd been dreading, her final morning at the Ambassador Hotel. At checkout, the receptionist informed her that her prepaid card was nearly drained. There were no funds left to prolong her stay. With no roof waiting and no allies left to lean on, the only options were a cheap motel or the charity of someone from her past. But she'd severed too many ties. There was no one. Her pride resisted, but hunger and exhaustion made the choice for her. She ended up in a crumbling motel on the outskirts of the city, the sort that charged by the week and promised nothing but walls. The air reeked of mold, the wallpaper peeled like dead skin, and every flick of the light switch summoned a flickering, buzzing overhead. She caught sight of herself in a mottled mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. Her eyes were sunken with sleeplessness. Once pristine and styled, her hair now hung limp and shapeless. She hadn't changed out of the same rumpled slacks she'd been wearing for days. She collapsed onto a tired mattress that sagged under her weight and recoiled as a cockroach scurried across the stained side table. Her stomach turned. How had it come to this? Then the phone rang. Heart racing, she snatched it up. Could it be Ryan? But the screen displayed a blocked number. Her finger hovered over the answer button. Then she pressed it. Hello? The voice on the other end was smug and unmistakable. Well, Margot, congratulations. You win. It was Dr. Thomas. I'm finished. They let me go. Word's out. I've been blacklisted all over. My wife's left me too. So yeah, cheers. Her laugh came sharp and bitter. Win? I'm living in a roach motel while Ryan demolishes the rest of my life. Guess that's what happens when you get involved with a walking disaster like me, he said, dripping sarcasm. You're no victim, she shot back. Next time you pick someone to cheat with, maybe don't choose the wife of a man who goes nuclear when he's crossed. She wanted to scream, accuse, curse him for everything, but there was nothing left to give. Just emptiness. After a pause, Thomas hung up. She let the phone fall beside her without a second thought. Whatever attraction there'd been between them had soured into something foul. Desperate and out of options, Margot made one last gamble. She still had a name, Felix, an old military buddy of Ryan's. Ryan had trusted him with everything, even his travel plans. If anyone knew where he'd gone, it would be Felix. Her fingers shook as she dialed. He picked up. Yeah? Her voice tightened. Felix, it's Margot Walters. There was a long pause. Right. Margot. Ryan told me not to talk to you. Her chest constricted. Don't hang up. I get that you think he's lying, Felix said flatly. But I'm not getting dragged into this. Ryan's been through a lot. If you want to make this right, it's on you. He asked for space and I'm honoring that. Then the line went dead. Rage surged through her. She hurled the phone onto the sagging bed. No one would help. They had all circled around Ryan like loyal soldiers while she was left to rot. A week crept by, then another. Her suspension from the hospital was quietly converted into a formal termination. A letter showed up at the motel. Your employment has been terminated, effective immediately, due to conduct violations. Her downfall rippled fast through the medical world. Every hand she reached for pulled away. Job leads evaporated. Meanwhile, the last of Ryan's bitter farewell gift, the prepaid card, emptied. One by one, her jewelry pieces were sold for scraps. Control, once her shield, slipped through her hands like water. Night after night, she sat under the motel's flickering light, rereading the note Ryan had left behind. I'm not filing for divorce. I don't care about legalities. I'm not interested in marrying again. I've taken what I need. If you want out, you file. I'll be out there, on the road, as free as I want. Just once, if you don't mind. That one line always landed like a dagger. Just once, if you don't mind. The exact phrase she had used when confessing her affair, downplaying it like it was nothing. His retaliation hadn't come with yelling or violence. It had been precise, calculating, and utterly devastating. He hadn't just taken her money. He'd ripped away her peace. She remembered telling him once that she craved freedom, excitement, independence. He had delivered all three, served cold in the form of abandonment, desolation, and silence. With nowhere else to turn, Margot finally summoned the cold determination to contact a lawyer and discuss divorcing Ryan on the grounds of abandonment. It felt like her last grasp at reclaiming even a shred of dignity. What she needed most was legal guidance, a roadmap through the wreckage of her life. She wondered if she might be able to argue that Ryan had misused the power she once trusted him with. But the lawyer didn't soften the blow. The road ahead would be steep and unforgiving. Ryan had orchestrated everything with chilling precision. His documents were flawless. Every real estate deal had been thoroughly recorded, complete with signatures and disclaimers in perfect order. The money vanished, likely funneled into accounts far beyond reach. In a letter Ryan had sent, he claimed he used her signature from a legally binding power of attorney, something she had signed of her own volition. The attorney didn't mince words. "You can take him to court," he said, "but it will cost you more than you can imagine." Victory wasn't promised. Far from it. Margot stared at the cost breakdown, numb. She couldn't afford the fight. And just like that, she was forced to face the same cruel choice Ryan had left her with: proceed with the divorce and bear the consequences, or remain tied, on paper and in pain, to the man who had taken everything from her: her house, her finances, and her sense of agency. Hollowed out, she walked out of the law office. Whatever dreams she had of holding Ryan accountable in court collapsed under the weight of practical reality. She drove her dented second-hand car, paid for with pawned heirlooms and last-ditch deals, back to the grimy motel that had become her only refuge. Heavy clouds crowded the sky, hanging like the dread pressing on her chest. She sat in silence, listening to the engine's soft clicks as it cooled. A few tears slid down her cheeks, quiet and uninvited. The woman who once moved through life with unshakable confidence now sat weeping in a motel parking lot, stale cigarette smoke wafting in through the cracked window. When she finally moved, she unlocked the door, walked in, and dropped her bag on a flimsy, uneven table. Her eyes fell on the cardboard boxes stacked in the corner, what remained of her old life. At the top, old love letters poked out, mocking her with promises long since broken. Her hand slammed against the table. Fury rose in her like fire. "Ryan Walters," she snarled, her voice sharp with rage. "You vile bastard!" But even as the words left her lips, his voice echoed in her mind, the raw, wounded voice from a call weeks earlier. He had sounded devastated, angry, betrayed. And beneath all the chaos, she couldn't deny her role in it. She had crushed his pride, flaunted her affair like a trophy, and walked away as if it meant nothing. The quiet, tender man she had once known had transformed into something unrecognizable, something dangerous, shaped by the pain she had caused. In a final act of bitter reflection, she opened the photo gallery on her phone. Her eyes settled on an old image from her first affair, taken at the Red Roof Inn. She looked so young in it, grinning slyly next to a man whose name she barely remembered. She deleted it, as if erasing that memory could also erase the ache inside her. But the relief never came. The phone still held hundreds of photos, snapshots of a life that Ryan had already turned into ammunition against her. He had exposed her, humiliated her, and he had won. That fact pierced her like tiny shards of glass beneath the skin. All that was left were some salvaged belongings, a ruined reputation, and the lingering sting of utter defeat. Ryan's revenge had been ruthless. calculated beyond anything she had expected or could defend against. As night fell, the city outside blurred behind neon reflections and streaks of car lights. Margot curled up on the rigid motel bed, arms wrapped tight around her knees, finally allowing the weight of it all to crush her. If only she'd handled things differently, been more honest, less arrogant, maybe things wouldn't have spiraled out of control like this. If only she hadn't ignored his outraged messages, hadn't dismissed his heartbreak like it was just noise in the background, maybe he wouldn't have retaliated so viciously. She hated him. But somewhere inside, she also knew she had planted the seeds of his fury. And so, the illusion of Margot Walters's untouchable strength finally crumbled. The laughter she once shared with Thomas in that hotel bed had vanished, replaced by the relentless drip of a leaky faucet and the reek of stale smoke in a room too small for redemption. Within those walls, she was forced to face the truth. Her pride had been the match, and Ryan's wrath, the fire. He had turned into something far darker than she had ever imagined. A brittle laugh stuck in her throat as she stared out into the unforgiving night, haunted by the aftermath of her own betrayal. Only now did she understand the full cost of one reckless decision, a decision that had triggered a storm so violent there was no way back. This story has come to an end. What's your opinion? Share it in the comments, my friend. And if you like this story, check out other exciting videos on my channel. I'll say goodbye until the next video. See you.